Okay, we're live. Good morning and welcome to the February 22nd Public Design Commission public meeting. We have two projects on the public hearing agenda today. If you're watching via YouTube and you would like to give testimony on either of these projects, please sign up on our form and log into the Zoom meeting when they begin. And you can find out all the information on joining our hearing in the video description below the YouTube video. And I believe we can start the consent agenda.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Signe Nielsen. I'm president of the Public Design Commission. I'm going to start the public meeting with a roll call. So when I say your names, commissioners, if you could just say here. Phil Ahrens.
Here.
Lori Hawkinson.
Here.
Deborah Martin.
Here.
Manuel Miranda.
Here.
Richard Moore.
Here.
Thank you. Susan Morgenthau.
Here.
Ethel Sheffer.
Here.
Merrill Tisch. We know she's here. Mary Valverde.
Here.
Great. So we will now proceed to vote on the consent agenda. We have today items 27675 to 27687. The staff has noted that there are no commissioner recusals. Is there anything that's been overlooked? No, for the let the record show there are no recusals. So I will now call for a vote. Commissioners, you can state your vote for the consent agenda by approving all, rejecting all, or rejecting or abstaining from an individual project. Phil.
Approve all.
Lori.
Approve all.
Deborah.
Approve all.
Manuel.
Approve all.
Richard. We know he's here. Susan.
Approve all.
Ethel.
Approve all.
Merrill. Mary.
Approve all.
And myself approve all. So even without those two people who are not able to communicate, we have a unanimous approval for the consent agenda. So now let us move on to the public hearing for item number 27688, prototypical pipe bollards for installation citywide by the Department of Transportation. So per standard procedure, we will let the applicant make their presentation, hear any public testimony, and then we commissioners can convene and vote at the end. So applicant.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, commissioners. My name is
Good morning,
Nick Petnati. Nice to see you all from the New York City Department of Transportation. I'm joined today by Casey Gorell from our pedestrian unit, and we're happy to answer any questions once we run through the presentation. But I will jump right in, and great, it works. Okay. So commissioners, as I'm sure you're very aware and have seen in many instances throughout the city, there are a number of different types of bollards throughout New York. Security bollards, we come to you on a regular basis to present proposals for those. The Martello bollard, I'm sure you've seen around at our pedestrian refuge islands. These are generally geared towards traffic safety and are typically located in those types of circumstances. And then I'm sure, as you've seen in various places throughout the city, there are these pipe bollards. They're generally speaking of various sizes and shapes. There's not really a ton of consistency about them throughout the city, and they're somewhat ad hoc in their usage. It's really something that's sort of accumulated over time. And so as the agency, we see a really important value in the use of pipe bollards, particularly to address locations where there's real conflicts between sort of illegal or unwarranted movement by vehicles that then impact pedestrians or cyclist safety, but doesn't rise to the level of NYPD counterterrorism, vehicular safety, or sort of fit the sighting constraints that we have when we use the Martello bollard. And here are some examples of some existing cast iron bollards that you may have seen. Not only are these sort of difficult to maintain from an agency perspective, they're also, generally speaking, not so consistent with the streetscape vocabulary that we as an agency have worked so hard over the last 10 years or so to establish. And you'll see later in the presentation, the proposed design is really trying to bring this tool that we as an agency think is really important for specific type applications in line with the design of our overall streetscape palette. So why pipe bollards? Again, just to reinforce this, there's a number of instances where we see vehicles driving on sidewalks that really create an unsafe condition for pedestrians. It's not malicious in any way. It's just the nature of certain locations, whether it be vehicles trying to take shortcuts or whether it be unintentional and vehicles just sort of hop up onto the sidewalk without really intending to do so. These are locations where, you know, based on observation, based on complaints that we get in, we really want to be able to address the safety concerns that we see. And up until this point, really the agency has had to respond to those with some of our typical operational materials. So you'll see the planters in the picture on the right, or the granite blocks that we've installed around a gas station on the left. These are obviously not ideal. The use of these materials is really intended for something else. But to date, we haven't really had a sort of a functional toolkit element like the pipe bollard, something that was approved. And the goal is really to utilize this prototypical pipe bollard to replace these kinds of short-term treatments and have a solution that is aesthetically consistent with the overall streetscape vocabularies, minimal in impact to the sidewalk and pedestrian circulation, and ultimately meets the functional requirements that we'd be looking for in, again, deterring sort of these uses where we have vehicles driving along the sidewalk. So the proposed design, again, we've tried to keep it very simple. This is something where we've done a bunch of research to find multiple companies that can produce the same type of design. It's a fairly sleek stainless steel bollard with a narrow reflector strip. It's about 4 inches wide, 2 feet 6 inches tall. And we'll get into this in a little bit. There's a couple of different material options and use cases that we're obviously happy to talk through with the commission. So as I mentioned earlier, the goal is really to bring the design of this bollard into a more consistent vocabulary aesthetically with a number of the street furniture elements that we have, everything from the city rack to the city bench to wayfinding. Our streetlight poles are generally silver. But the overall goal of the material is, in fact, to try to keep it consistent with the predominant streetscape vocabulary that happens to be in a particular area. And I'll get into that in just a couple minutes. Again, here's a cut sheet of the overall bollard. This is fairly straightforward. Again, 4.5 inches, 2 foot 6 inches in height. It's meant to be embedded into a concrete sidewalk. And so generally speaking, you'll see this particular bollard used in those locations where we do have a concrete surface. For the rare instance where we have to install a pipe bollard in asphalt, we do have a slightly different design that comes with a surface mounted plate that allows for us to install these in asphalt. We'd be bringing these types of instances, I think, to you all on a case-by-case basis, but there are certain locations in previously or when we reclaim certain parking areas or where we have to install a bollard in an asphalt surface where that previous bollard just won't work. And so here's a cut sheet of that. Again, it's a slightly taller bollard because we're not installing it on that curb, so it's 36 inches, but otherwise the dimensions are relatively the same. And from a material perspective for the pipe bollard, we are looking at two predominant finishes. The stainless steel bollard is what you'll see in the majority of instances, but we do also have the ability to order a powder coated black version. So in those instances around parks or where we have a predominant streetscape palette that has a black finish, we would be able to then match, and that is the goal from a siting criteria perspective. We would match whatever the predominant streetscape vocabulary palette there is. And so here we have again, sort of the main guidelines for the material choices and when we would use those. So the two bollards on the left are essentially the same bollard. They're both the sort of sleek 4.5-inch bollard, one in stainless steel, one in powder coated black. Those would be for concrete surfaces, then the material would match the adjacent streetscape vocabulary. And then again, the bollard on the right is for use in asphalt installations only. So we've broken out the use cases into sort of two main categories. We're seeking a citywide approval for application of the stainless steel bollard at ped ramps and wide bike ramps throughout the city. And then we have a number of sort of case-by-case application examples that we'll review with you today, but those are instances where we would submit the specific location for essentially siting approval by the commission on that case-by-case application. So as the commission is aware, the city DOT, we're embarking on a massive program to rebuild all 300,000 pedestrian ramps in the city. That's following a lawsuit. We're making ADA upgrades to all of those locations. There are two ped ramp use cases where there is this very wide pedestrian ramp that gets created and ultimately could allow a vehicle to drive up on it, where pedestrians are supposed to be able to wait safely to cross the street. And so in these instances, and then also in instances where we have very wide bike ramps or bike pedestrian combo ramps, these would be the two cases where we would want the ability to install this pipe bollard to, again, prevent vehicles from inadvertently driving up onto these spaces or trying to use them for shortcut purposes or whatever may be the case. This is a good example actually in Queens Plaza, where you can see the predominant streetscape vocabulary is the sort of black finish of the streetlight poles, of the fencing. So in this instance, we would propose that same sidewalk bollard, but in that powder coated black finish. And then here's another example at Laurel Hill Boulevard in Queens, where you have this wide combo ramp and sort of a, unfortunately a potential ability for vehicles to drive up here and use this as a shortcut. And so having a bollard here to separate those uses, again, ultimately prevents that unwanted activity from occurring, and is fairly simple in its application. The wide bike ramp, ped ramp, generally speaking, would need to be 8 feet or greater in order to be eligible for the installation of a pipe bollard. That way we can maintain 4 feet of clearance on either side. And here we just have some of those standards in terms of how this might be used in, again, a bike lane ramp, or if we have this very wide apex or blended transition pedestrian ramp at the corners. And these are just showing that in an axon for the ped ramp conditions. And then we have, just to wrap up fairly quickly, the case-by-case application. Again, as I'm sure you may have seen, there are a number of instances where we have either very, very long curb cuts or vehicles try to traverse over a sidewalk space as a shortcut. And these are instances where, the simple application of these bollards would help to deter that activity, ultimately safeguard safety for the pedestrians, and is something that we as an agency can install and maintain. We've developed these sort of general siting principles. The goal is always to utilize as few bollards as possible in these instances to deter the illegal activity. And we're going to prioritize installation based on complaints or actual staff observation of these conditions happening. The general siting criteria, you can see it's pretty much adhering to the siting guidelines that we've established in the street design manual. As with many of the things that we've talked about with the commission, if there are any installations within 75 feet of public art, we will bring those to you for specific consideration. And we are also trying to be cognizant of landmarks and making sure that we're not installing these in historic paving, where landmarks is still regulating that historic paving within a district and trying to minimize views to landmark buildings. So the last couple slides is just going through a couple of examples. We have long curb cuts. There are both legal and illegal long curb cuts throughout the city. It's a very difficult process to get them changed, but that's not necessarily to say that we wouldn't always try to pursue ensuring the curb cuts were in compliance with whatever the requirements from DOB are. That said, where they do exist, and this is a great example where you've got lots of school-age children that have to traverse this very sort of wide series of curb cuts by a gas station, and vehicular entry points are ill-defined. They've tried to do it with these pavement markings. These wear away very quickly. So in an instance like this, we would really try to reinforce the entry points and exit points with the installation of these pipe bollards, again, to help deter sort of that driving along any random point on the sidewalk in order to get to this gas station. This is obviously one example. We have another one here where we see a car essentially using the ped ramp to get to this small parking lot and driving along the sidewalk. The goal, and here's a similar example near the Williamsburg Bridge, where you have cars coming that don't want to go onto the bridge, take this shortcut and driving over the sidewalk space. So these are instances where, again, it's based on a number of observation. We've received numerous complaints about this situation happening, and the ability to install a handful of bollards here would prevent that situation from occurring. Here, we're trying to take advantage of an existing city bike station and existing other furniture or deterrence devices. So again, the goal is really to minimize use of these wherever possible and really address the issues that are observed or that we've received complaints on. And that's it. So again, tried to move through that fairly quickly, but happy to talk through any questions you might have. Again, we see this as a really valuable tool, one that we want to use very judiciously, of course. I think we very much are in agreement with the general stance of the commission to try to reduce clutter as much as possible. But we think that this is a vast improvement over the sort of what's out there now, and is something that we as an agency feel that we can properly maintain, and again addresses these issues as they come up and as we have to face them in a very real case-by-case kind of situation. So thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Signy, we do not have any public testimony for this one.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know me, Nick, I'm head ramps all the way. So first of all, I think that there are absolutely instances where this is warranted. And so I support the initiative, and as long as you've got to do it borough-wide, we might as well have some consistency. I do have a question, if you could mind going back to slide 14. It was a situation of protecting a bikeway across a very wide avenue. And it seemed to me, yeah. So in this instance, you've got concrete on the near side and you've got asphalt on the far side. So would you use the same bollard in both those instances, even though you said you'd have one for concrete, one for asphalt?
So that would be our goal, is to try to keep consistency. I think in this instance, we haven't really heard of any significant complaints. And Casey, obviously, please jump in since I know you're more familiar with this specific location. But I think the goal in this particular place would be to install the bollard just in the concrete ramp as shown by that red dot, as opposed to in the asphalt bike lane on across the street. But I don't know, Casey, am I missing something?
No, you pretty much covered it. This is a location where cars are actually using this to get to the service road on Queens Plaza, and that's why the bollard would be located there. Just kind of the way the streets are laid out here, we actually don't feel the need to put a bollard on the other side. We've never observed any cars using that portion, but
Okay.
and I would also highlight that the asphalt version is really used in those locations where we still have car access nearby. I think we could explore at this location using a concrete embedded bollard if we needed to on the far side, since it is a separate bike lane.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you're, trying to minimize these. And so if there's no demand for the other side, then why put it in? Great. It was just more of a theoretical question as to, if I'm a biker and I'm trying to kind of find my way, the difference in Bollard seems a bit kind of crazy just because the ground material is one or the other. So just suggesting that in the future, you not be maybe so rigid about the asphalt to concrete split and think about it more as, how does somebody perceive the visual connection?
Mhm.
So anyway, that was that thought. Then I'm a little confused, and this is like a sidebar here, but I'm a little confused about these new ped ramps. Are you splaying the entire corner so that it's like an apex drop? Like, yeah, that one, go to the red one, the one with the red.
The photo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Is that the
Yeah.
future goal?
So very rarely in general, this is a use case that we have designed and will permit under certain circumstances. And from what I can understand, it's primarily to do with the grading concerns of a particular location. So of the like 300,000 ramps that we were planning to reconstruct, there's maybe 1,000 that might end up with this type of very wide sort of blended transition. And of those, only a small percentage per se would even need the use of bollards. So it's not as though you're going to see thousands of corners with bollards. It's really a tool that, again, is going to be based on either clear observation or clear previous observation of a particular location. So this is,
Right,
again,
okay.
a possibility, but not something that we'll see quite often in the city. Most of them will be your typical, one ramp for each crosswalk, two at a corner kind of a thing.
And you're catching the water uphill of these ramps. Because I mean, right now with all this slushy snow, it's a perfect
Yes.
example of just like the puddles that occur out there. Okay, that was a sidebar. Any other commissioners want to weigh in? This isn't just, aren't you just all fascinated? So if there are no other comments, then let's take a vote. So you can approve, reject, table, or abstain. And if you want to make any comments with your vote, please feel free to do so. So taking it in the same order, Phil.
Yeah, Phil had to leave, so.
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Lori. Lori.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Approve.
Okay. Deborah.
Approve.
Richard. Has he ever been able to?
I can see him mouthing approve.
He mouthed approve. I think
If that
Fine.
counts.
Great. Looking for every vote you can get, Nick. Susan.
Approve.
Ethel.
Approve.
Meryl, is she still with us?
I am.
Yes.
I'm here. Approved.
Thank you, Meryl. Mary, is she left? Yeah. Okay. And myself approve. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
I approve also.
And Manuel,
Thank you.
I-
Manuel, why are you not on this list here? Sorry. So it is unanimous, and it is more than what's the word we use? It's more than you need. What's the word I'm looking for?
quorum.
Thank you, quorum. So there are no conditions except to just think about, relationships if there's different ground plane materials. And thank you very much.
Thank you all, commissioners. Really appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Thank you all.
So we're moving on to our next project, which is item number 27689, construction of a cafe kiosk at Columbus Park by Borough Hall, by Brooklyn Borough Hall.
And I also want to make another announcement about public testimony. If you are watching this on YouTube and you'd like to give public testimony, or if you're in the meeting and you would like to give public testimony, Please sign up on the form. There's a link in the video description below the YouTube video, and there's also information below the YouTube video on how to join the Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Great. So I guess Parks is presenting.
Yes. Good morning, commissioners. I am Joy Gutierrez, and I am the Parks Department's Revenue Architect. I am joined this morning by Tony McCary, the Director of Concession Architecture at Parks. We are here today to present a design for an outdoor food kiosk in downtown Brooklyn at the southern tip of Columbus Park. Adjacent to Brooklyn Borough Hall. And here's an overview of the location. This Parks concession was competitively bid through a request for proposal process and is being operated under the terms of a 12-year license agreement between the City of New York and German Doner Kebab LLC, also known as GDK. They are represented here today by Eunice Shahul and Nigel Belton. As the licensee, they are responsible for the construction of this new snack bar, previewed here in this image, as a requirement of their contractual obligation to the city. That includes the replacement of the existing kiosk. Here is an aerial view of the site. It's located on Joralemon Street, again, next to Brooklyn Borough Hall over here, Columbus Park beginning here, and the law school across the street. The existing kiosk, shown here in a couple of images, previously functioned as a shoe shine stand and as a newsstand, and was combined and converted into a food service facility in 2007. So here's some additional views. The kiosk was most recently operated by Nuchas Empanadas, and we should note that it is currently not ADA compliant. The new kiosk with GDK's investment will address these accessibility issues and bring it up to code. Some more views standing from the kiosk, looking at the surrounding vicinity. So you can see that there's a lot of pedestrians that walk by this site. This public-private effort is a priority of Parks to create a new amenity for the community, its residents, commuters, and students to fully enjoy while creating vital new economic activity at a critical time in our city's history. We recently presented to the local community board, and they were very positive towards our project. IO Creative are the design architects based in London, and they are represented today by Stephen Richardson, who I will turn this over to present the design. Thank you.
Joy. Hi, everybody.
Sorry, I'm trying to give you control.
Yeah.
Give me 1 minute.
Sure.
Okay, I should be transferring control to you now.
I think that's working. Nope. Yeah, I think it is, but I'm not sure how we get through it. Technology, wonderful. Sorry about this. I think that's it. Okay, right. Sorry about that. I think we're online now. Okay, so as Joy said, I'm Stephen Richardson. We're the designers for GDK. We're based in London. GDK is a great brand. It's a very popular new food brand in the UK and in Europe. And this is our first foray into America with it, and we're really excited about this. It's normally the offer is normally a restaurant, so it's normally a family sort of sit-in restaurant. And again, this is our first foray into doing a curbside kiosk. We've got two 2 sites at the moment in Canada and a third one in construction at the moment in Toronto. But as I say, this is our first step into America. So basically, it's quite a simple concept. It's a sort of a theatre food concept. So it's kebabs and associated offers with that. And the main thrust of the brand is where the colour schemes are black and orange. And the very important part of it is that we have what we call a theatre kitchen, so that while the food's being prepared, it's very visible to the public, and people can actually watch their kebabs being carved and salads being added and everything being put together. So I'll just skip through this first bit. So we went through a lot of options and alternatives in terms of where we site this, and we've been very conscious of where we put it and in relation how it sits to what kiosk was there at the moment. So it's a slightly larger footprint than the original kiosk that's there at the moment, but as Joyce said, what we're doing is we're gonna, when we build a new one, it'll be fully DOB and ADA compliant. And we've sited it so we've got plenty of foot traffic space between us and the curbside of Jorolliman Street. Very simple plan. It's a very simple kiosk, counter service type of thing. So we'll have a queue in front of a counter. We've got a service area. This area here is our ADA compliant area. So that's a drop counter service. And this half of the external seating area is also ADA compliant. So we have these external seats along the front, and these are removable. Obviously, these can be brought in on an evening when the kiosk's closed. We also have shutters, which will come down again when it's closed, so it becomes a fully sealed unit. This is just an elevation showing the front of it, and you can see from this where we've got ADA compliant counter, and then our normal sit-at counter, and then again the ADA compliant ordering area. The majority of the cladding to the kiosk is going to be a black powder-coated corrugated steel. This area here, as I mentioned, we're very much about having an open concept and having this theatre kitchen. So this is a glazed frame, so people can see in, and the actual salad bars behind there, so you can see your kebabs being put together. And then we've got our open area where you basically order and then continue around the corner and pay, and then wait for your kebabs to be ready. This is a rear elevation. Again, black corrugated steel, nothing too intrusive in terms of views around the area. We have sited, and we've got a great lens in terms of where we put this and how it works, but we've got a refuse store. We obviously need a refuse store, for the product refuse that's going to happen inside, and also for customer refuse. And what we wanted to do was hide this as much as we possibly can, but nobody wants to see a storage container full of trash. And this is quite a nice design. It's ties in quite well with the kiosk itself, so it blends in. And it's very simple. It's fixed to the back of the kiosk, but it's not fixed down to the ground, so we're not doing any damage to tree roots or anything like that. So we have put a lot of consideration into that. Again, these are side views. The left-hand view shows the left-hand side of the kiosk, where obviously we've got our staff access door, so people can get in, and then you can see on the left where the refuse unit storage sits in relation to it. The right-hand side, again, basically shows our main service counter, where people will queue and order their kebabs. And again, these are coloured elevations showing how the scheme works. As I said earlier, our main brand colours are black and orange. We've kind of toned it down a little bit and mainly kept it black. And the front counter, as you can see here, is in a reconstituted stone. It's a Hymax stone, which is, again, this will look like concrete. So it's made to look slightly urban and look like concrete, which ties in with the corrugated steel. And on the underside of our roof, which overhangs all the way around, which helps us give some protection to customers when they're queuing, when the weather's not too great. The underside of that will be on our brand orange, and that will be in a container style folded metal material. The roof itself, and this view you can see from the rear, The roof itself is a raised seam zinc roof. So again, it's quite a nice tie-in with the rest of the materials that we're using, and just provides us good runoff for the rain. And then again, you can see our refuse unit at the back again, which will be padded black. So that helps tie in and helps hide it from the rear view. So this is just a view showing how it sits in relation to the buildings across the street and to the park itself. So as you can see, it's not that intrusive. We've kept it quite low. We've kept it down below any of the trees that are sitting behind it. So we're not interfering with those. And again, compared to the buildings across the street, it's quite a younger brother. I think it's a tiny little things there. And this is just showing the palette of materials that we intend to use. As I said, the top left, this will be our glazed frame, which will have black metal framework and then glazed interior. And then next to that is what will sit on the underside of the roof, and that's our orange powder coated container style metal. And then the counters themselves will be in this concrete effect Hymax. Internally, it's all very, very clean interior. All of the customer visible areas will be in a black metro tile. And our external walls are all covered in the black powder coated corrugated steel panels. Bottom center, you can see our standing seam zinc roof. And then this is an idea of what the refuse unit will look like, but it will be powder coated black. It won't be grey like that. This is a sketch just kind of showing how it will look. And as you can see, as I talked about, it's very visible in terms of the food offer. So you can see the kebabs being cooked. You can see through into the kitchen and see everything that's being prepared. We have our lowered ADA compliant section and our lowered ADA compliant counter. Again, we've been very particular in terms of making sure that this covers all the code elements. And this is a sketch just kind of showing how it sits in situ. With the park behind it, as you can see, it doesn't really interfere with the trees. We're allowing plenty of access for pedestrians and on the pavement in front of it. And this is just a view from the rear, again, just to show that it's fairly unobtrusive and how we're trying to get our refuse unit to blend in so that it doesn't cause any offence. And I think that's pretty much where we are. So that's it really. As I said, we're really excited. We really hope we can get this through and I think it'll be a great addition to the area. It's a wonderful food offer and I hope you guys fall in love with it as we have in the UK. We've got 50 restaurants here now in the last 3 years and it's really took off. It's been a really good brand. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any testimony, Carrie?
No, we don't.
All right. Happy for any questions from the commissioners.
I have a question, Signe.
Sure, Deborah.
I think the design of it is very handsome, and I don't have that much to say about the detailing of it. I just wonder, and this is really more of a question for Joy and her parks colleagues around. I went to visit the site yesterday, and the view behind it up into Cabinet Plaza and then across over to that, there's the Shake Shack and the open space there. I just wonder if there was any consideration given to whether this could be designed in a way that could incorporate, and looking at the plan would help, but we all know what it looks like, a gathering space for community. Like maybe if you can pull up the plan, there's now when you look back at it from the back, there's just kind of a blank wall, but actually there's a great deal of space here, some beautiful mature plane trees that could be considered a kind of opportunity for a public space. And instead, the only gathering space is the counter that's on what is already a kind of busy circulation spine on Joralemon Street between Fulton and into the Heights. So I just wonder if that was ever considered as a kind of seeing this as an opportunity to create a gathering space. because it's a gorgeous view up into Cadman Plaza and those trees, and now we just turn our back on it.
Thank you for your pointing that out in your comment. That was something that we had looked at early on in earlier iterations, and then in discussion with the borough, thought it might be best not to extend any formal sort of plaza seating on the grassy area because of the trees and I think maintenance concerns. However, the licensee is allowed to propose that they would like to add small tables and chairs, but Parks would have to approve that. And I think in this case, we're trying to be more sensitive, at least on the hard surface, that there's going to be a lot of passersby. So we kind of want to get the kiosk done and then see how the flows happen.
So I'm not sure, and maybe Carrie or Signa, you could speak to this. I hear you on the wanting to see how the flows go, but I still think thinking about the back as a front also is something that could be considered, because now this construction will foreclose the opportunity of creating a kind of transparency from the other side that would enable a public gathering space on that side. And so now when you sit down there, well, you're looking into the kitchen, which I think is lovely, but it's, again, could be a kind of hinge and entry into that space going up into Cadman, that now it's by constructing it this way, it forecloses that opportunity should the opportunity come up to, let's say, the maintenance of tables or whatever, or creation of a public space behind becomes something that Parks deems doable. Because to me, this is like a very rich opportunity for a kind of gathering space that sort of exists behind Borough Hall, where people skateboard, but like there's no vendor there, so it doesn't kind of really happen.
Deborah, are you speaking about this green space just to the east? No, you're speaking to the west of the.
There's like many opportunities there. I think it's the east, it's the west, it's the backside. I mean, I think you could capture little spaces all around it. The side that has the least space is the Geralman Street side. It's all doable. It's just a question of like, do we feel like we want to do that? And is that really an opportunity that we want to invest in?
I think it's a very underutilized section of the park.
Yeah.
And actually, I believe what's shown in green is really the judges' parking on the other side. I think that whole terminus really should be rethought. So I get what you're saying, and I mean, whether people get their kebab and then find a place in the park. I think what we're saying to Parks. Sorry, architect. We'll get to your building in a second. What we're saying is that this is an opportunity, perhaps, to create some places for people to hang out, whether they're eating or they're not eating. It would be like a Pops where you don't have to buy anything. So just to think about that, because as I said, that green space should not be judges parking, and but that is a topic for another day. And so just following up on the trees, the architect said that the storage facility was somehow or another suspended off the structure, because Parks, how are you letting this go? It's within the critical root zone of that tree. How are you telling me this is okay?
I also had a question about that. The drawings don't show it in the it says that you're going to be attaching it, but I didn't see in the drawings if that was the case. It was separated. I had a
So
question.
when I said attach it, I kind of meant it would be probably chained to it or something like that, just to stop anybody moving it. What I meant was it's not a fixed structure. It's not something that we're going to put anything into the ground. It'll literally be a cage, albeit a nice looking cage with a door in it that will be sat on the grass, and it'll be chained to the side of the structure, so it won't be able to be taken away by anyone.
But I noticed in the section, it appears that the roof drip line, it would actually fall like halfway into the refuse.
And maybe
Well,
can we go to the section?
This will come in the next sort of stage in terms of construction details, but it will have some form of roof on it as well. So it may run onto that, but then it will run off.
Can we go to that section? There. Yeah, so I had the same question because I'm wondering what this cage is sitting on. That's dirt?
Again, it depends what we're allowed to do. I mean, ideally, maybe some pavers that it sits on. So we maybe put a sort of light paver on there, or maybe it just, I don't know. That's kind of the next stage, I think, in terms of.
But I mean, with the frost and thaw, it's gonna get all wonky, isn't it?
Again,
Parks, you can't let this happen. Parks, come on, that's the critical root zone of that tree. It's got to move to the other side or somewhere, but it cannot be on top of this tree. Cannot.
Yeah, I think our understanding was that it was going to be soffitted to the structure, and so that it was, not going to be affecting the tree root zone. So there were not going to be any like footings going into the ground or anything.
But even so, let's just assume that somehow or another, miraculously, this has no foundation. There's going to be compaction on top of that critical root zone from the garbage. That is the critical root zone of that tree, and that's not okay.
I think the other concern was that if we moved it to the other side of the kiosk, that the amount of foot traffic with the employees going back and forth to throw out the trash would create just as much compaction on the tree.
Well, you just have to open the gate on the other side. Don't let them walk completely behind the structure. Closer to the judge's parking. Right. So if the cage is moved just closer to the judge's parking, then the employees have to enter from that side. They're not going to enter and go all the way around and walk all over the tree. You've got to solve this problem.
Can you just flip the footprint, interior footprint?
Well, that.
Yeah, we could do that.
You mean flip it with the door to be at the.
So that the door is closer to the east, so they would just go out that door and around to the left to the cage.
And then what does the thing sit on? What does it sit on in that case? Just the ground?
Well, then it's if they needed to put in piers, it'd be okay. But then you're right, it's the garbage sitting on the dirt.
And the fence is what's going on with the fence on that side?
You'd have to remove a section of the fence if that was the case.
Well, you would on the other side as well, no?
There isn't any fence on the other side. There's only
You're right. You're right.
It's a very small section of fence. It looks like 2 panels.
Yeah, it is very small.
So maybe to Deborah's point, you get rid of that return altogether, and then that opens up the opportunity for people to move north. Anyway, it's really, I'm just asking Parks to please be definitive about this and give the architect correct direction. But right now, this is not correct direction.
We have had conversations about this, and we have got a few potential solutions. I mean, potentially we can suspend it off the rear of the unit so it doesn't actually touch the ground. That is one way to do it.
Okay.
And I
That-
think,
that
I
would
think
be
we,
Preferable.
yeah, and then I think if we find out that that's not feasible, then we could, flip the refuse to the other side. I think flipping the whole plan is something we'd really have to talk about, because there was something about how you capture the flow of people moving. So
Right, so having the opening closer to the kind of intersection and,
yes,
yeah, understood.
It's like the back door at the front almost. Right?
right.
That's why we would be putting also the refuse at the front if we did that.
Right, I mean, I think that this location visually is preferred, right? It's not right at the entrance, there's more screening, et cetera, et cetera. No question that that's a good choice, but it will, if this is the determined scenario, then it will have to be suspended off the.
Yeah, I don't see that as a problem. It's not a difficult thing to do. I mean, it's not a really heavyweight structure. So, and the trash that's going to go in there it's cardboard. So it's not going to be anything that's particularly heavy.
Oh, good
Yeah,
Lord,
so-
it just started snowing really hard.
So what we can do, commissioners, is we can also just double check once more with Chief Prince and with Forestry, and if it is better to move the refuse then away from the root zone, we'll just move it down a little bit, but maybe not aligned with the edge of the facade, so that it's tucked a little bit towards the back.
Appreciate that.
And then I was just curious, I know this wasn't brought up earlier, but how was the refuse handled before?
I don't think it was, to be honest.
Then there was did they keep it in the building?
I don't know.
I believe, yeah, they have a private carting contract that would come every day to collect it, and I think they kept it inside until it was time for it to be picked up.
I mean, I feel like, we're getting refuse buildings in parks, which, that's something that's unfortunate. It's not a building, but, if it's cantilevered up, it should either feel like it's part of the building that you're presenting to us, right? It's kind of intrinsically one thing, but not this kind of backyard afterthought. And then anyway, it's going to have to structurally be attached to the building. So it, and then it needs to consider the runoff from the roof, which, I know we commented on, but I didn't hear addressed, but I assume you will address where the gutters take the water away.
Also, again, this is really for parks to discuss, but, the rodent situation is bad enough in parks to start with. And then you add a food source and, there's kind of a built-in problem here. And I think that's one of the reasons that most of the park restaurants that I'm seeing are having indoor, sometimes even refrigerated trash collection, so that if there's a holiday or the carting service can't pick up, or for whatever reason, that, the refuse is not accessible to rodents. So I don't know what parks policy is on that, but I just say it is a concern that should be considered.
Yeah, I will say that as part of our license agreement, the rodent control is part of that. We have 2 inspectors that go around to all of our sites, and we also field, complaints from the community to, if they notice things like piles of garbage or something, and we address it pretty quickly.
Okay, it's just, I'm trying to be a little bit proactive so that if the architect can use his ingenuity to build something in so that it isn't, a problem that you have to solve after the fact. Okay, any other comments? Okay, then we will take a vote as we did before. And you may, again, provide any comments that you'd like with your vote. And I have made note that Manuel is here and who is not here. So, Lori.
I would want the trash to be integral part of the building, so I don't feel comfortable approving it until I see a resolution on that.
So that would be a table.
Table.
Okay. Deborah.
I agree with Lori. I think it needs to be integrated and possibly consider making that backside more transparent.
Thank you. Manuel.
I would approve with the conditions that Lori and Deborah have stated.
Richard. He's going to have to do hand gestures. Hand gestures, please. Up, approve. Okay, thank you. Susan.
I think I'm going to have to say table with regard to Lori's concerns with the garbage being integrated.
Okay, Ethel.
Approve with the conditions.
Oh dear, this is complicated. Meryl.
So, well, I hope I'm not going to further complicate. I'm going to approve with the conditions that Lori and Susan referred to, because I assume, as always, that Lori is an expert in these matters.
Well, actually, Lori is tabling, but her points is what you're agreeing with.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
As
fine.
I was, but approving.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, thanks.
And now that leaves it up to me. So we have right now, it doesn't look like this is going to pass, by the way. We have 3 approve with conditions. If I calculated right, that was Richard, Ethel, and Manuel. And then we have Lori, Deborah, Susan, and myself wanting to table until the.
Plus Meryl for the approve.
Oh, sorry. So we're 4 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So we do not have a quorum consensus. It's completely split. So that said, I think that the submitting team, the applicant, heard our concerns, and if you want to, test out a couple of alternatives and do this on a more casual basis, so that the next time it comes before the full commission, we'll have a clearer direction.
We'll follow up with
with
the Parks Department on how to move forward.
Okay. Great. Thank you all for your time. It is snowing again, and see you in a month.
Thank you, Signe.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Signe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.